Hi everyone, I'm Chauncey Nebula, and today let's talk about 5 reasons why you should play Star Wars Legion and 5 reasons why maybe you shouldn't. Now, I'm going to do my best not to be overly positive or overly negative about Star Wars Legion, and I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. I'm going to do one positive, one negative, then another positive, then another negative until we've got 5 reasons for and 5 reasons against. The first positive I want to talk about is the rules, primarily the fact that they're completely free. Both the Learn to Play guide, the rules reference guide, I think there's also a quick reference sheet, all of those are completely free PDF downloads. You also get all the unit cards for the unit when you buy the box, so that you don't need to buy a separate, cumbersome rules book or an army book or anything. All of those rules are free or come with the models, which honestly does save you a lot of money. For most miniatures games, you have to buy the army book and you have to buy the models. And for a lot of games, that army book is $30, $40, $50. And that's $30, $40, $50 that you could be spending on models. Star Wars Legion doesn't do that. They say, spend your money on the models. Buy the core set, buy the models you want. The first negative is not really something wrong with the game itself. It's something wrong with the game, in a more meta sense, and that is the scale. The scale's not 28 millimeter. The scale is not 32 millimeter. It's kind of its own thing. I have yet to find a scale that it very accurately corresponds to. So because all of the models are this sort of Legion scale, you're going to have a hard time finding pre-built terrain or just stuff in general to put with your models, because tabletop gaming isn't just the models, you also have something to play on. And unless you're willing to 3D print or make your own stuff from scratch, you're gonna have a bit of a harder time finding stuff that fits well with Legion's scale. The second positive kind of ties in with our first positive, and I think it's a big one, and that is cost. Because the rules are free and Legion is on the small side for army-style games, you're not playing with a ton of models unless you're playing, Separatist Swarm. You're really not going to spend as much money on a Legion army as you would on a Warhammer 40k army or really any other game that I've come across. Legion fits this nice price point where if you buy the core set is $100, and you'll get anywhere between 400 to 500 points of 2 different factions. If you buy the Clone Wars core set, you get Separatists and Republic. If you buy the original core set, the Galactic Civil War core set, you get Empire and Rebels. Now, the amount of points you get does vary, but for the most part, you could take that core set and you can have 2 skirmish armies, which is 500 points. Standard games are 800 points, which means that you could pretty easily upgrade the contents of your core set to having 2 full 800-point armies. And the price of the models is honestly very reasonable. A commander model or an operative model is going to be, $14. Maybe you get it for less, maybe you get it for more. A standard infantry unit, like a standard core unit, is going to be, maybe $25. Really, the highest cost of anything in the game is going to be like $60, and that's going to be for your tanks. And for the most part, you're not going to be fielding more than one of any given tank or heavy unit. The second negative is something that isn't really a problem once you get used to the game, but can be challenging as a new player, and that is keywords. Legion is saturated with keywords. There are so many keywords in this game. It is almost unbelievable. Pretty much the entire rules reference guide is dedicated to explaining keywords. And this is a not small rules reference guide. Now, of course, if you've played the game for a while, you know what all these keywords do. You memorize them, and there are a lot of keywords that just aren't pertinent to your army. If you're playing Republic, chances are you're not going to have any nimble things in your army. So why do you need to know nimble? You really only need to know all the keywords if you're going to play competitively, or if you're expecting to face something unusual or that you just don't normally see. The other thing with having all those keywords is that every time that they make a change to the rules reference guide, every time that they update that rules reference guide with new things from new units, they're adding new keywords, and they go back and they sometimes modify older keywords to make them more powerful, less powerful, to clarify them a little bit maybe. So you really do have to stay on top of it. And having so many keywords in the game, I know when I started out, it was a little bit challenging. But of course, once you start playing for a while, once you kind of get used to it, it's not really that big of a deal. The third positive is, by the nature of what's in the game, most of the models are pretty easy to paint. You've got a lot of battle droids. You've got a lot of stormtroopers. You've got some rebels. You've got clones. These are generally very simple utilitarian paint schemes that don't have a lot of decoration or filigree like you might see on a historical miniatures game or a fantasy game or even a sci-fi game like Warhammer 40,000 or Infinity or something. These are models that are very utilitarian. Tanks are, for the most part, gray. Stormtroopers and clone troopers are white. Battle droids are tan. These are very simple paint schemes. So it's very easy to say, I've got all my models, and sit down and paint up your army. It's not as much of a time investment with Star Wars Legion as it is with other games. The third negative is something that really does bother me, but I know it doesn't bother a lot of people, and that is the limitations to force building. In a standard 800-point game of Legion, you can have up to 2 commanders, up to 2 operatives, up to 6 core, but a minimum of 3 core, up to 3 support, up to 3 special forces, and up to 2 heavy units. This means that if you want to do tank spam, you just can't. You can have 2 tanks. That is it. And that will, of course, take up a good amount of your army, but it's not really going to be the armored cavalry that you were hoping. And also, having the fact that you have to have at least 1 commander and you have to have at least 3 core in your army means that you kind of have this tax built into your army kind of right off the bat. Now, there are generic commanders and low-cost core units. They exist. Each faction has a generic commander that costs 55 points, and each faction has their baseline core unit that does vary in cost. But the fact that you do have to have this kind of built-in structure means that if you wanted to really go in and have a ton of just single model heroes, you can't really do that. If you want to have a lot of tanks, you can't really do that. If you want to have a lot of special forces, you can have 3. In some cases, you can have 4 because there is a keyword called entourage where you can essentially include an extra of a certain unit if you have the corresponding commander in your army. That's really the thing. You don't have the same kind of freedom in force building as you do with other games. Yeah, most other games say at minimum you have to have, a commander or an HQ or something of that sort, and you need to have like 1 battle line or whatever troop. But it is true that for most other games, they give you that bare minimum, and it's not going to take that much out of your total force points. In Star Wars Legion, it really does, because if you don't use a generic commander, which is 55 points, and you use maybe a named commander, that's going to be anywhere from like 90 points all the way up to 200 points. And you have an 800 point army. Now, of course, you can play Grand Army, which is 1,600 points, and this isn't as big of a deal, but you do still have the tax built in, and yeah, you can field a lot more tanks, but Grand Army isn't really played that much from what I've seen. The fourth positive is to do with the way the gameplay is structured, namely that you have 6 battle rounds. And in each battle round, you have alternating activations until each player has activated their army, and there's a very limited number of things that each of those units can really do. Because of that, Star Wars Legion is a game that is quite a bit faster than most other army-style games. Now, that's not to say that Legion is really rapid fire or doesn't have any kind of tactical thought involved. It does. Legion is a game that requires a lot of forethought. It requires thinking a couple moves ahead. It's a game that really does make you utilize your creativity in many situations. That said, normally an 800-point game of Star Wars Legion takes me and my friends, while we're standing around talking and maybe not playing the game super assiduously, maybe like 3 hours. Because we're standing around, we're talking, we're playing the game, but also like walking around and seeing what everyone else is doing. But if we really sit down and say, we are going to play this game, we can be done in an hour and a half, 2 hours. And honestly, that's really nice, because sometimes you have an afternoon to play. And if you say, well, an afternoon is 4 hours, that means you can probably get 2 games in, where some games that are really big army-style games, you just can't do that. You're only going to be able to play 1 game. The fourth negative is to do with storage. Star Wars Legion has the models, but it also has all of these unit cards and upgrade cards and condition cards and objective cards and command cards. There's a lot of cards involved. And the fact that there are so many cards involved means that you have 2 options. One, you either toss all of them in a shoebox and say, well, that's it. Or you buy a binder and you get binder pages and you organize them very nicely, but then you probably have to carry that binder with you. And, while you don't have an army book to carry, you do have to lug around all these cards. It's not that big of a deal, really, in the grand scheme of things in terms of storage, because, cards are just that. They're small. But the problem also arises with these cards in that sometimes the unit gets updated. Now, we'll get to that in a moment, because the updating of the cards is going to be the 5th negative. So let's talk about the 5th positive. The 5th positive is that it's Star Wars. Because the subject matter is Star Wars, and Star Wars is very recognizable, it's very accessible, it's very easy to find people who are interested in playing with you. You could walk up to someone, sure, and say, hey, play this game of Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar or Infinity or whatever with me. And they might look at the models and say, wow, that looks really cool. Yeah, I'll play that with you. But it's just not as recognizable as saying, hey, do you want to play Imperials? I've got Darth Vader and I've got a bunch of Stormtroopers here. Because of that accessibility, it is very easy to find new players who are interested in trying the game. And because it is Star Wars, it's very easy to go to a convention or go to your local game store and set it up and have people walk by and say, oh, that's really cool. And, what is this game? I recognize that's Darth Vader. That's Luke Skywalker. That's Obi-Wan Kenobi. What game is this? Can I try? Now, I realize that this isn't necessarily to do with the game itself, but as miniature wargamers, we all know that it is our solemn duty to infect as many people as possible with the wargaming bug. And the way that we do that is by finding things that are accessible, that are somewhat easier to play, that we can introduce these new people to and bring them into the cult. I mean, fold. But moving on to a little bit more of a serious topic, the fifth negative, the updating of units. Now, this is both great and frustrating because, yes, constant updates does mean that the company cares about the game. The game being updated means that it is consistently balanced. It is very easy to pick up Star Wars Legion and have it feel balanced. The other side to that is, aside from, oh, well, now my army doesn't work anymore because this one unit got increased by 5 points, or this thing is now 10 points more, or, oh, now I can't put this upgrade on this unit. Aside from all of that, you have all of these unit cards, and sometimes not only the points are changed, sometimes actual changes are made to the text of the unit. There have been instances in the past where keywords have been added to or taken away from certain units, therefore making the card for the unit pretty much worthless. Most people, when they build an army, they don't get out all their cards and add up the points based off of the points that are on the card. Most people go online and use a force builder. But if you're in the middle of a game and you want to reference what a unit does, and you look at the card and it's got a keyword on there that shouldn't be there, or it doesn't have a keyword that should be there, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, of course, the easy way to do this is just print out a modified version of the card. They're all over the place online. It's very easy to do. But the frustration comes from the fact that you have to do it. Most games, whether they're tabletop or whether they're video games or whether they're role-playing, whatever kind of game it is, every single game has updates. Every single game has rebalancing. Every single game has changes. But when the changes involve a physical play piece that you are going to have with you during the game that you are going to reference, having that changed is just annoying. Now, in pure casual games, it really doesn't matter that much. If you're just hanging out with your friend, you're playing a game of Star Wars Legion on your kitchen table, and, you don't have the new keyword on there, it's not going to matter that much. So long as you're having fun, that's really the important thing. But if you go to a tournament, or you're actually really trying to win, or you're playing a little bit more seriously, having to print out those cards to have the updated versions, it's just an added thing. And, maybe you forget. Maybe it's just something that slips your mind. Maybe the game, updates come out and, they change the rules reference guide and you don't realize that they've changed the unit. Which means that you have to be very assiduous with every time that they update the rules reference guide. You have to look in the back where it says all the points changes and it says all the different erratas for the cards. Now, granted, at the front of the rules reference guide, on the very first page, like the title page, it has at the bottom in blue all of the things that were changed, aside from points and errata. Any changes that were made to keywords or key gameplay mechanics will be listed on the front. So if they changed, for example, how armor works, you would see armor on the front page in blue, which does mean that you can just kind of download the newest rules reference guide, open it up, and see immediately what things have been changed. And that's really it. 5 reasons for Star Wars Legion, 5 reasons against. Not necessarily, perhaps, why you should or shouldn't play the game, but things to keep in mind if you're being realistic about your expectations for the game. Now, personally, I love Star Wars Legion. I play it a lot with my friends. We have a great time with it. We like the game. We have our gripes with it. We have those times where we look at the newest rules reference guide and we go, why did they do that for? But, for the most part, we're on board with what happens. We're always talking about the new unit that's coming out. We're always going into the spoilers and talking about the lore and like, well, we're going to get a Yoda. So, if it's a Yoda, then, based off of the lore, he has this kind of lightsaber form, which will probably manifest itself in this way. And, we do all this kind of theory crafting, which, doesn't really do anything for us. But we get really excited about the game. And I think the fact that you can really be excited about something even so minute as, what is the exact wording of this keyword on this new unit going to be, means that it's a game that really has a lot of longevity and really has a lot of capability to inspire, whether it's painting your models or inventing new scenarios to play or just sitting down and having another game with your friends. Now, if you agreed or disagreed or have any remarks whatsoever on what I said in this video, please leave them down in the comments below. And if you liked this video or just plain found it useful, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon to get notifications for when a new video goes live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.